Good morning. Okay, it says talking. I can't. Janika, can you hear me now? Janiqua. Good morning, Patricia. Okay, good morning, Troy.
Good
Uh,
morning. Good morning.
So, are you with the students today or no?
I'm not. I'm not with them today.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know where they are. They probably because I know the director of Goodwill said they're gonna be in. They want them in a classroom. So the location that we provided last that I knew. I don't know what happened after that.
Oh, okay. No problem. Um,
I don't know if they went back down to Goodwill. I don't know if they went back to JCTC. I don't know what happened.
the spot maybe,
Right. The
because
spot.
isn't the spot where Goodwill and JCTC come together? Is that
Yeah, in
what I understood on the news?
the tech building A.
Oh, okay.
But the instructor did say there was trying to add another student to the class, a new student, and I told them they have to talk with you and Tiffany in regards to that.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany. Yeah, Tiffany would be the one to contact about that because I can't add any students. They have to go through workforce.
And I because I was uncertain, it was like if it was too late since you already started and all of that, and I was
No,
like,
it's not too late. Um, it's not too late. Because the modules that we're going through, I'm recording everything. So the modules that we're going through shouldn't be that taxing. They just
no,
have to get up to speed, um, rather quickly. So, but it's still doable because we're just going to go up to the 15th, I think,
hmm
as far as in class, and then we'll pick back up in January because the institution closes. So, yeah. All righty. So let's see who's all here. Okay, Patricia, Janiqua, and I see somebody else, but I can't. Okay, Jonathan. All right. Well, good morning to everyone. Um, Glad that you are able to join us today. Give me a moment and let me switch my screens so that we can get on Blackboard. So, did anyone have any questions from yesterday's session or from any of the sim books or anything that I can help you with today? If you do have any questions, of course, you can post it into the chat. And looks like someone has done just that. So let me go over to that screen. Oh, okay, Janika. Okay, you can hear me though. Oh, okay. Is there anyone that can't hear me? Um, are you all together? Where are you all at? Is it like on your own today, or are you, at the spot? Or thank you, Janiqua. Or are you at the Amit building? Yeah, I don't know where you all are at. It really doesn't matter, but okay. Okay. We are on our own. Okay. Somebody's in the library. Janiqua, you're at the library. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So, oh, all of you are at the library. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is do my let me share it again because um okay, so hopefully you're already logged into your my path, and you know you're on. Oh, they're in the Amit building today. Okay, the advanced manufacturing and IT building. Okay. Oh, okay, in 205. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully they'll get your schedule together before we start the class where you're going to work on your A plus certification, because having that degree of uncertainty can be unsettling. So, um, and I'll talk to Workforce Solutions about that. Get a solid schedule. Oh, okay. Day, is it Deshawn or Dazon? Um, and need login info. Okay, so Troy's gonna respond to you there, Patricia. Oh, okay. So he's coming over. So new student, please be patient. Troy's on his way um, to help you guys. Yeah, it'll take him a second to get there. So we'll get situated. In the meantime, for those of you who are, at the Amit in 205, please, share, um, share your screen with your classmate, your new classmate, so they can see exactly what's happening. Okay. And can someone confirm um, that you see my Blackboard window? Because I mean, I see it here quite naturally, but sometimes it doesn't, you know, necessarily tell me that you all can see it. So I just want to confirm that you do see it. Janiqua, I'm just confirming that you can actually see my Blackboard um, window. So if you could just tell me if you see it. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. That is so helpful because I hate to get to talking and then you can't really see what I'm seeing. So, but thank you. Okay, so on um, on Blackboard, of course, we only have two folders or modules, however you refer to that, available in the course content area. Of course, we're already sort of finished with the start here area. I still have to go into that voice thread and listen to or look at, your comments that you left in there and grade those. I was supposed to do that yesterday, but I had a whole bunch of folks reaching out to me because at Jefferson, we're at the end of the fall semester. Well, the fall semester is technically over. We're in finals week. And so, of course, I have all sorts of folks sending emails. Please let me, complete this assignment. And so I've had to, I didn't have to, but, trying to help students be successful. Um, and trying to accommodate as many students as I can, making assignments available, and talking to students who basically didn't get all of their work completed. so so I do apologize. Okay. Dazon. Okay, we haven't added him to the system yet. So okay, so am I saying, can someone pronounce the new student's name? Because I don't want to keep saying it incorrectly. But so you haven't been added to the system yet, um, as you haven't been enrolled onto the roster yet. And so for today, you'll just have to listen and, just look at what's being demonstrated. Everything that we do online is recorded, so you can actually, listen at it later and, view it later. And I'll show you how to do that. Day John. Okay. Day John. Okay. Thank you so much, Patricia. Okay. So, okay. Now, so that was from Troy in the chat. So I guess you'll probably show up tomorrow. And once you show up, then you can actually, set up your account and, get in and review all the lessons that have happened so far. Okay, except that first Tuesday, I wasn't, with the class that time. All right. Okay, so basically, this is how everything looks initially once you get into Blackboard. And we see the start here area. Even if you're added late, Dejan, you still want to click on the start here. And what that does is it sort of shows you everything that's inside that folder or module. Okay, so you definitely want to do that. Okay, everyone else is in the Practice Computing Basics folder or module. And yesterday, I added the watch recordings of live class sessions. I'm going to add yesterday's to that in just a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and click on it so you can see what it looks like. So this was the first session, or not the first, this was the second one. So I'm not for sure if I recorded the first one, but I'm trying to go back through and look and see about those recordings. So this is how it would appear. And so you would just click on this little play button, okay? And I'm just going to do it real quick to demonstrate how to make it full screen, okay? So click on the little red button, and then down here in the bottom right corner, click on that. Let me mute that. There's a little 4 bracket little button down in the bottom right hand corner, and this basically says take it full screen. Okay, so if you click on that, then the playback or the recording is full screen, where you can then press play, pause it when you need to, things like that. Okay, so each day we will have a, hold on, for some reason, not able to scroll. Each day you'll have, a little video in there. So I'm going to put up yesterday's right here in just a few minutes, and then today's will be recorded and it will appear under there. Okay, so you just click, and for each recording, especially if you were not in the live session, of course, you do want to take notes, because it's hard, to remember everything, because there's a lot of information in this class. Okay. So the Practice Computing Basics voice thread was added yesterday, as promised, and it'll be due next Wednesday. Okay, so Dejan, if you don't understand what a voice thread is and it just seems weird, it's just a graded discussion. So I may put, a little video together, a little brief video, or, some kind of demonstration, and then we'll ask everyone in the class to participate. So, and then you participate commenting how you would like to comment. So there's a texting option. You can use your mobile device, or you could use your microphone, your headset, or what do they call the little, well, I guess they would call it a headset that comes with your mobile device. So you can use that, because they do have a microphone on the wire. Okay, to make those comments. So here are basically our chapters. And so we're past the introduction to computers. There's only 6 tasks in that particular chapter, giving you an overview of what a computer is, how it's basically revolutionized the world that we live in. And sometimes we forget that, technically the electronic computer is probably maybe 45, 50 years old. So, and then we talk about the personal computer, which didn't come about until, like the 1970s. So, I was born in the 1970s. And so it's, computing is not necessarily as old as I am. Of course, personal computing. Now, there were larger machines called mainframes that took over, up to 3,000 square foot. That's more than the square footage of some people's houses. But these computers were not in people's homes like computers are today. or in your hand like your mobile device is. So, um, so we went through that, and yesterday we, started talking about the hardware. And basically, what will happen is, as you go through each sim book, I will basically give you some more information. So it may help you, and I do advise you to have a 5 subject notebook just to keep things sort of, cataloged, so that you can go back and study. But what you're putting in this 5 subject notebook is anything new that you've not heard before, because that's really where the learning takes place. Um, and so, can someone or everyone type into the chat where they are in the hardware sim book? If you completed it, that's great. If you're still working on it, that's okay as well. Okay, Janiqua, finished? Good for you. Thank you. Um, okay, so now that you're sort of getting the hang of how the sim books are going to go, um, you can move through the sim books at your own pace. I remember, hi, Jonathan. Thank you for confirming that you're finished with that one as well. I did have a couple folks at the beginning that said, oh, I'm going to go through these really, really quickly. And it's possible. I've had students in the past to go through the entire class in 2 weeks. They just sat down, and did it until everything was completed, but they did it, in a super fast fashion. But it's definitely possible to do it. Okay, thank you, Patricia. Thank you. I'm glad that you all are, able to work through all of these. These SimBook pages and the Let Me Tries. So what are your first thoughts, those of you who have completed or worked on the sim books? What are your first thoughts about, SimNet? Um, is it fun? Is it interesting? Is it, just give me something in the chat, or take yourself off mute and let me know what your thoughts are. Initial impressions. Okay, Janiqua says it's interesting. That's awesome. Anyone else? Easy and interesting. That's awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. That's awesome. Well, if you have any thoughts about it, add it, and, we'll, if I see it when I come back to this screen, I'll give you a shout out. All right. So you can work on these at your own pace. I would recommend that, although the institution Jefferson is closing for the holiday break, I would continue to work if you can. Okay, if you have a computer at home, or maybe you can go to, a family member's or a friend's house, and and Patricia, okay, I can work with it. It's easy. Okay, awesome, good. I'm glad um, that you all find it, so user friendly. Um, that's what I think about when I hear easy or interesting. It's user friendly. You can kind of figure it out, right? And so, but you want to work on these. This is basic knowledge of computing that every computer user should know. Okay. And like I'll be recording every session, giving you some additional notes that maybe the sim books, don't necessarily go into the detail that I'm going to go into. And um, so hopefully today we'll be able to get through input and output as well as system software. Okay. Um, During the class. Now we're going to take like, 2 10-minute breaks, 10 or 15-minute breaks today. So we've been at it for about 30 minutes. So in say like 10 minutes or so, we'll take a break. Okay. So let's go ahead and so we're going to get out of this particular tab on our browser, and we're going to start a new tab, or you may have already have it open. It's called My Path. And so, Dejan, that is mypath.kctcs.edu. And that's how we get into our Blackboard. That's how we get into email, and also how we get into what they call student self-service. And what student self-service is basically, this is where you would see your grades, basically all things student. So if you decide to come to Jefferson as a full-time student later, you'll know that student self-service is where you go to get your grades, your financial aid, you see what's happening as a student. Okay. So let's go to My Path, and then we're going to click on Blackboard. We're going to get into our own Blackboard, and Dejan, you're just going to have to, sit next to somebody um, through this process, um, and just watch what they're doing, because it should be sort of intuitive for you to kind of catch on onto. So we're going to go through input and output today. Okay. So if you're finished with hardware, um, go ahead and click on input and output, and we'll get started on that. And then if you're not finished with hardware, please continue to work on the hardware. As I mentioned, it's not a whole bunch of pages that you're going through in these sim books. The first initial ones are like 6, 7, 8, 9 pages. So it's not a 50-page, book that you're going through, or chapter. And that's really what each of these represent, is a chapter. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started with input and output. And I'm going to kill my camera here, and so that you can focus. Okay. And I'll be with you momentarily to start the lecture portion. Give me a moment. Okay, so our input and output section is only 10, 10 pages. So that kind of lets you know that it's not too taxing of a chapter. Okay. And I think the highest number of pages for any chapter is like, and I think it's the internet one is the longest one, and it's like 20 pages. Okay. So that means you'll have like 20, um, between 15 and 20 let me try activities to complete. So once you get here, you can click to open the book, the ebook, or you can go down below and um, click on each one, but that would be sort of time consuming. Okay, so the recommendation for you, of course, we're using the Google Chrome browser. That's the recommended browser for, the best experience on SimNet and Blackboard. Um, you just want to click on Open SimBook. Okay, so it opens your first um, task or your first page, and then in the center middle of the page, you have a right pointing arrow that goes to the next page once you finish this page. And to finish the page, of course, you want to read everything that is on the page and take notes on anything that you have not heard before. Um, and that's just good study skills. Okay. You only want to capture the stuff that you've never heard. Um, and then to complete the page, there is a let me try activity at the top left of the page. And once you complete that, you'll see a white check mark that will appear on that little green icon. Okay, so input and output. Now this has a lot to do with the information processing cycle that we sort of learned in the Introduction to Computers SimBook. Okay, there are 4 things that a computer does. That's input, process, storage, and output. Okay, so the computer has every device that is connected to a computer, whether that's through, a Wi-Fi connection or a physical connection, meaning a network cable, or not necessarily a network cable, but a cable. Okay. Um, this each device is considered to be an input or an output. There are some devices that can be both. Okay. For example, if you work at a fast food restaurant in 2021, and there's a drive-through, okay, most likely there's a screen outside that shows the customer exactly what they ordered, and then on the inside, the person on the inside is selecting things on a screen as the person orders, right? So not only are they selecting what you're ordering, but they also see on their screen maybe the total of it, maybe, each item itemized, okay, on their screen. So that would be technically an input and an output device, right? Because they can touch it to input instructions, and then they get out of it how much that transaction costs and the total number of items in that order, right? So there are examples of devices that are both input and output. The same with at home. Like I'm on my laptop, and this is my personal laptop. Um, it's not, this high-powered machine. I rarely will make a large investment in a machine because technology has a way of um, turning really quickly So basically, every 3 months, there are new sort of inventions or new additions to the technology ecosystem. So it's really not wise to spend a whole bunch of money. And when I say a whole bunch of money, I say anything above $800. That's a whole bunch of money on a device. So all of these mobile devices that we have, of course, mobile devices are, you know, since we can touch the screen and also see stuff that we see on the screen, that would be considered both an input and an output. But these things are expensive. So that's why they split the payments up when you get a new phone. Um, they split the payments up over months, right? Um, Do you think that, Janiko, good question. Do you think we could have robots that can reproduce? You know, I saw something on the news, I think it was over the weekend or last week, where, they said something to that effect, but it's really not a robot. Because if we think about a robot would be just a simple electronic device, right? That is following instructions from somewhere else. Robots can't be living organisms. Um, I think what they did was they sort of, extracted some human cells and had those cells to reproduce without a human body, if that makes sense. Um, but it's not really. Yeah, it can be dangerous to delve into that, but I don't think it will, because just having human cells does not create a human brain. Um, you know, it's, it is what it is. You know, I think it was just an attention grabber instead of, really having any hope that that's actually going to take place. Um, You know, I don't think that mankind will ever get to where, um, the production of a robot will, you know, be able to reproduce itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that that will ever happen. And um, there's really no, of course, none of us have like, you know, a complete forecast of what's going to happen in the future, but I can't see that. Um, because really behind a robot is a human, right? A human has to provide the instructions for the robot or the robot wouldn't exist. Um, so, just like a computer, the computer wouldn't exist if a human did not create it. So, but those are great questions, but you're going to see all sorts of things on the news. And I want you to start paying really close attention to not necessarily the headlines, but sort of dig a little deeper into the technology stories that come out, and they come out on a daily. Um, there's always something, someone's created something or discovered, something that they didn't discover from old, technologies, and it's really, an interesting space to sort of be in. So as a technology professional moving forward, you're going to have to sort of keep up with, the latest and greatest things that come out. Okay. So in this input and output sim book, of course, we start off with the keyboard. Of course, there are all sorts of different keyboards out there. Okay. About 10 years ago, I went to France and, I didn't think anything of it. Like when I went, I was like, well, I'll, I'll use the technology there and surely it'll be the same. It's not. Okay. So small things like the keyboard. When you go to France or any other country, the keyboards, the letters on the keys are going to be letters in their language. But it's a good thing I took my own laptop too. Um, but sometimes I had to use their keyboards, especially if I didn't have my laptop with me. If I was at a college or university there, I would, venture out and, but it gets you into the mindset of not everyone speaks the same language, right? So of course, the littlest things like a keyboard is going to, be an obstacle or a barrier if you're not familiar with that language. Uh, but you get familiar, especially if if you want a new experience. So, but I did have that experience like 10 years ago, and the things that we're having now um, in some of the restaurants, some of the fast food restaurants I've heard recently here in Louisville, where they have the touch screen, like when you go in and to place an order, instead of going up to the counter to place your order, you're going up to a touch screen device, and putting in exactly what you want to order. And that was in France over 10 years ago when I went. I went in 2010, so it's 11 years ago. And that technology they test out in other countries, um, other smaller countries before they bring it to the U.S. And so that stuff existed when I was in France in 2010. Okay, so we're like just now getting it here, um, and we probably would not have had it had not the pandemic happened, right? But I remember going to a McDonald's. They have a McDonald's in. I went to Montpellier, France, which is Louisville's sister city. Um, 11 years ago. It was it was June of 2010. And they had one of these devices, and you could choose the language that, you spoke. So people from all over the world go to France, right? So you choose the language on there, and then it'll give you the menu at that McDonald's. Um, and it was so weird too, because I'm thinking, okay, McDonald's here in America, I can get me a McChicken and I can get me a fry and an apple pie because that's just what us Americans do. Well, I go up to the little kiosk, and it it asked me what language. So I chose English, and then it showed me the menu. Um, they did not have a McChicken, but they had the Big Mac. Um, they had soufflés on the menu. They were geared more towards French cuisine than American cuisine. Um, I There was not an apple pie, um, you know, but there was a fish sandwich, like filet o fish. They had that. Um, so it was just, you know, really bizarre to see a completely different menu at a restaurant that we're so used to. Okay. Um, but you got to be prepared for those kind of situations. Okay. Now with these keyboards, right? Um, there are all sorts of different types of keyboards. I was talking to someone in the technology space at Jefferson last week, and I asked him. I said, "Well, have you ever heard of this particular keyboard?" And they was like, "No." And I had not heard of it either. But again, these things change so frequently that, even technology people, we have to, kind of stay on top of it. And I just happen to have gotten some communication from a colleague across the country who, encountered this particular type of keyboard and, sent the information to me, and I had never heard of it before. Um, but basically, you have these types of keyboards, wireless ergonomic, which means how you, interact with the keyboard. Is it really good for extended periods of time? As far as the human anatomy, are you holding, your hands properly? Because a lot of people get, you know, um, carpal tunnel by holding their wrists a certain way on, on keyboards. And so, but there are ergonomic keyboards, and they're designed to be comfortable, and they're tailored for the human body. Okay. So what that means is sometimes they're angled. So if we see this one here, um, where there's kind of like a circular look or flow to the keyboard, they're not just straight across. Because sometimes if you're holding your hand straight, right, then that means that your elbows are going to have, not elbows, your wrists are going to have to be up, which that can cause injury if you hold it like that for too long. Okay. Um, and but there are other types of keyboards. Okay, not just ergonomic or wireless. There are specialty keyboards, say for instance for gaming. So if you're into gaming, there's a special keyboard for gamers, okay, that give you all of the necessary keys to be successful when gaming. And so gaming programmers actually program their games, to, for this particular keyboard, which I think kind of adds a twist, um, to programming. I think it makes it a lot simpler for a programmer to know special keys, like they don't have to necessarily worry about the entire keyboard. Then there are keyboards, and you probably have saw them. Say, for instance, if you go to the ER, any ER hospital in the city of Louisville is going to have like a keypad that is just numbers. So they ask you for your social, or they ask you, you know, um, just for numbers, right? So I just use social as an example, but they may ask you for your date of birth, and you have to, put your date of birth on this keyboard, this keypad that only has numbers on it. But there are special, keyboards for various situations. And those situations are changing on a daily, seemingly. Okay. But your standard keyboard, if you're using just a standard, Windows keyboard, it's going to be 104 keys. That's, the norm. Okay. And you have these special, what I consider to be function keys at the bottom of the keyboard, and that is CTRL, which is commonly referred to as control. Um, the FN, or function, um, key. Then you have, of course, that Windows key, which the Windows key um, is kind of one of those keys that if you select it alone, right, it goes to the start menu will pop up, right? That's on most Windows-based computers. But if you're using a Mac has a key as well, and it's called the Command key. And it's actually got the word command on it. Okay. But it does the same thing that a Windows key on a Windows keyboard would do. Okay. So you basically use it um, mostly in conjunction with other keys to get it to do what you need it to do. Okay, then we have the Alt or ALT key. Again, all of the apps that we're going to use, um, you can use the Alt key in conjunction with letters on the keyboard to do specific actions, to do specific things. Okay, and these are considered keyboard shortcuts. Okay, now you have an entire row at the top of the keyboard that begins with ESC or escape, and then you have F1 through F12 at the top of the keyboard, and these are called the function keys. Okay, so F1 is globally known as the help key on the keyboard. So what that means is if you're in a program or a software application, same thing. If you tap on the F1 key, you're going to launch into the help system for that particular program or software application. Okay, so F1 is globally known as the help key. All right. Also, you have a set of keys, and it may be different based upon the keyboard that you're on, but a set of keys that will have things like delete, insert, PRTSCR, which stands for print screen. Okay. Then you have a tab key, you have a caps lock key. Okay. Shift key. All right. An enter key. Okay. So you have special keys that do a particular singular job. That is separate from just typing. Okay, then you have maybe page up, page down, home, and end. And so we'll get into what all of those, of course, are. But your operating system, which will go into the system software soon enough, your operating system basically tells the keyboard what it is permitted to do while using that operating system. So that's why the Windows or operating system um, is so important, okay? Because it tells all of your devices, whether they're an input device or an output device, how they can function on that computer, if that makes sense, okay? Then we have pointing devices, okay? So some of you may know that have had experience with using a mouse. Okay, there are different types of mice. So you might have what is called an optical mouse. Okay, and that's the most common one. Like if you raise up the mouse itself, you may see a light on the bottom of of that mouse. Okay, and that's really just for motion purposes. Okay. Um, so then right next to it, you see this little red ball with what looks to be like a mouse. It has a left mouse button and a right mouse button. It also has that little wheel in the center, the same as this one here. Okay. And basically, this goes up and down. That wheel goes up and down, but this ball goes sideways and up and over and down as well. Okay, so it has a left down, a right down, a right up, a left up, and then it has, of course, the right and left side. So some people prefer using a trackball mouse. I never caught the wave of that. I've had one, but it was just annoying more so than anything. So I like the pretty standard um, mouse. Okay. In the chat, type into the chat whether you like a trackball or a regular mouse. Janiqua mouse, yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those that I could just got to have a standard mouse and I'm okay. Um, and then of course, if you're using a uh, a laptop, you're going to have what is called a mouse pad. Okay. Yeah. Not a mouse pad, a touch pad. Right. The touchpad reminds you of using your mobile device. Yeah. Janiqua, I agree. Patricia, mouse. Yeah. Um, so we all have our own preferences, right? You know that some of the mobile devices that you get have the little stylus pen. There are also stylus pens for your computer. So you can actually buy a USB enabled stylus pen. And this is especially good for those folks that like to draw or like to design things. Okay. So there's all sorts of different kinds of devices depending upon what you do on a daily. Okay. So, but you'll have to sort of try to figure that out. And if a company that you end up working for offers it, sometimes companies try to accommodate their workers as much as possible and allow them to choose what type of devices that they use so that they will have a better experience on the job. Okay. Their goal, of course, is to make you as productive as possible. So, being that you're trying to go after, customizing machines, building your own machines, fixing machines, things like that, it's good to know that there are all these different types of you know, uh, equipment or devices that go along with our computers. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. So if you need to go to the restroom or get you a drink or just get up and stretch, it's good to do that a couple times, okay, during a 3-hour period. So let's go ahead and meet back at 11:10. All right. And I'll still be here if you have any additional questions. But for everyone else, just take your break. All righty. So hopefully we're making our way back into the computer lab and to continue working on our input and output sim book. Okay. So we talked about a standard mouse or a keyboard. Then we talked about maybe having a touchscreen monitor. Um, Touchscreen monitor could be both an input and an output, right? A standard mouse or a standard keyboard would be an input device because you are using those devices to input shortcut commands. The complexities of determining whether a device is an input, an output, or both is finding out what the device actually does. So if you have a laptop or a tablet with a biometric screening tool on the keyboard that scans your fingerprint in order to log in is both an input and an output. But mostly all tablets are both input and output devices. Okay. Now a standard monitor that goes to your desktop computer and displays your Windows desktop and other Microsoft applications is just an output device because it simply displays the results of your inputs. Likewise, a printer is merely an output because it prints out the results of your inputs, meaning the things that you type or the things that you click on, right? But if a printer is also a scanner, copier, and emails, capability of emailing someone, then you could argue that it is an input and an output device because you can see things on the screen. You get output on screen as well as you're inputting things by way of the onboard keyboard to actually do something, right? To input some instructions. So you have to know exactly what the device does. And so typically we know what the device will do by simply, reading the instructor or the instructions or the user manual, right, on that device. So, but there are situations where you might have to call it and say, well, maybe it's both an input and an output device. Are there any questions with that? Any questions with input and output devices? Okay, so here's an entire lesson on touchscreen devices. Here's the stylus pen that I told you about. Where you basically, can draw out, write notes, annotate on screen by using a special pen. Okay. And it's more often used by artists. Okay. But I know some graphic designers that use the stylus pen as well. And that way they don't have to recreate their images. They just create them once and they're already digitized. Okay. And we've probably seen, or experienced touchscreens. We have these in the form of kiosks, as I was talking about when we had the discussion on going into local fast food restaurants like McDonald's that may have their lobby open. But instead of you coming to the counter, you go to the touchscreen. I also experienced this at the bank. The bank now has a touchscreen. So as soon as you walk in, you can either go to the touch screen or you can go to the teller, right? Um, and basically do the same thing. But touch screens accept input, okay, by allowing you to place your fingertip on it, but it also gives you a visual to look at. So that's technically, output. So it's an input and output. Okay, but it comes in the form of a kiosk. Okay, a kiosk basically means that it's running by itself. Like there's no human sort of, you know, sort of getting it going, right? It kind of works on its own. And you've probably also had the same experience when you go to Sam's, Costco, Walmart, Target, when you walk past an aisle and something just starts talking to you, right? That's considered to be a kiosk. And I know the one at Sam's will actually ask you, would you like a sample of something free? And, that's how they kind of get you. But that device would be an input and an output because you're answering their question, right? So you have to touch something to answer their question, right? So that would be an input. And then, but you see on screen the results of your input, right? So that's output. So it's an input and an output. So most kiosks are just that. They are input and output devices. Okay, so you have all kinds of scanners. If you've never used a scanner before, most of the copier machines that we have at Jefferson are, you know, um, are scanners, copiers, and they email as well. And, um, you know, if you've never used it, then you wouldn't necessarily know that it exists, right? And so, but there's all sorts of scanners. Okay. You've probably become familiar with barcodes. Okay. There are barcode scanners, and you see these in all different kinds of department stores or grocery stores, people walking around with what looks to be like a mobile device. But they're scanning the barcodes in the store, and that's for inventory purposes. Also at UPS or FedEx or, um, those folks that deal with packages, they're scanning constantly. And then also, these are QR codes, right? I saw one on the news yesterday. Um, well, actually, it wasn't the news. I think it was for the Wednesday Child. Um, what was it? Like a campaign, a fundraising campaign for the Wednesday Child program. So they put a QR code and kept it on the screen so you could use your mobile device if you have a QR scanning app, and it will take you to a particular website, okay, to give you more information about, that event, or, how you can give, not necessarily by calling in, because I think they were having some kind of telethon, but you could just use your mobile device and scan it, and it'll take you to that website where you can learn more about the Wednesday's Child program and also to donate if you choose to do so. And then we have these RFID scanners, which these are becoming kind of like, some people think that it's, opening opening the door um, for some kind of, how do I say this, end of the world kind of scheme. Okay, so basically this little This RFID tag basically stores some information, and what they do is implant it under the skin. And if you walk up to a scanner or a copier or some kind of machine that maybe gives you entry to a building or allows you um, to check out certain things, if it was in a warehouse or whatever. Um, so some people are labeling this kind of like, the Antichrist, this technology, and but you hear all kinds of different things. My mother always told me, you live long enough, you'll hear just about anything. Um, but here you have scanner apps. You can download those using um, your Google store or your Apple Play Store, right? Um, or App Store, I'm sorry. And, you can download, you know, a scanner app so that you can actually, scan things, okay, such as QR codes. Any questions about that? Anyone have any interesting, QR codes or RFID stories that you've already experienced? Yeah, I actually designed a program. This was 20 years ago because these barcode scanners have been out for a long time. So what we did was we made a barcode for each employee. And instead of each employee sort of, clocking in, they would just hold their barcode under the barcode scanner, and it would check them in and then ask them a couple of questions. So that, like, what's your social? Because people aren't going to give out their social, right? Um, so that was, gosh, that was in the 90s. I want to say mid 90s. So, the barcode scanner's been out for a long, 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 long time. It's nothing incredibly new. Okay. Um, okay. So on this one, it talks about multimedia. Um, and it's true, most of today's computers are equipped, with complete multimedia capabilities, which basically means that they can input and output sound, music, images, and video. Okay. So you are having a multimedia experience just using your mobile device. If you get on social media, if you listen to music, that is considered a multimedia um, experience. If you use FaceTime or Duo or Zoom or GoToMeeting or Teams using your mobile device, you're having a multimedia experience. Okay. Some of you use the feature on your device where you're talking to Siri. Okay. That has a lot of speech recognition built in, right? But that's also um, more so of AI or artificial intelligence, okay, where Siri can answer questions. Like you talk to Siri and say, Siri, what's 350 divided by 5? If Siri gives you an answer, that's artificial intelligence, right? Because those instructions were, or answers were already provided by a human, right? And the programmer made a way for that artificial intelligence to answer your questions, okay? But the artificial intelligence itself doesn't have the answers. The answers are provided by humans. okay, and stored. And basically, what you're doing with your device is recalling, getting that in Hi, Janiqua, you have a question? Sure. Questions about the codes. What codes? Over the binary code. Okay. I just recognized that I was on mute, so I'm not for sure what all you all heard or if you heard anything. So, um, yeah, you'll get the binary code here in this Practice Computing Basics voice thread. Okay. But I'll go ahead and play it so that you can hear it and see it. Okay. So, Dejan, I know that you can't log in, but this is what the voice thread looks like. Okay. So once you get into the voice thread, there's an information bar over to the right. And over to the right, we see it tells you, okay, you have to record at least 2 comments. Okay. And that does not mean leave 2 comments on one slide. It means here are the instructions. You are to leave 1 comment on each slide in this voice thread. So there are 2 slides. If there are only 2 comments, there's 2 slides. Okay. Then it tells you when it's due and how it's graded and if you've submitted it already. Okay. Once you submit it, this little not yet submitted will read submitted. Okay. But I'm going to click on start assignment and you see the start assignment turns into submit. Okay. All right. So let's play. Here is how you figure out binary code. Okay. Or machine language. Basically, 0 is the off and 1 is the on, or when a number applies. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is in the voice thread. Okay, so this chart that you see up here, this is where I was speaking yesterday. The only number in machine language that can double is the 1, right? So I start from the right with the 1, and then I double 1. Doubled 1 is 2. Doubled 2 is 4. Doubled 4 is 8. Doubled 8 is 16. Doubled 16 is 32. Doubled 32 is 64. Doubled 64 is 128. So you would just keep doubling, okay, for the binary code if, you know, if because like say for instance, the only time that the binary code would get bigger is say for instance if letters wouldn't need to get bigger. Okay, all of the letters in the alphabet can can work with this particular chart. But if you doubled 128 to 256, that is for instances where you're using pictures, right? Or images, because every image that you add on a computer has its binary code as well. Okay. Um, so that's the only time that the binary code would would go above 8 binary digits. Okay, so this is 8 because it's 8 spots. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I have a question. Let's see. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay. So would it be however many times the numbers go into 53? Well, yeah. Well, Janiqua, on here, I think it was Janiqua. Hold on. Yeah. So let me back up and just remove everything off screen. Okay. So this chart here, okay, with these two rows, as I mentioned, I start with 1. 1 is part of machine language as far as computers are concerned. There are only 2 digits. It's a base 2 numbering system. Okay. So there are only 2 numbers, 1 or 0. 1 means the number applies or it's turned on, and 0 means the number does not apply, it's turned off. If that makes sense. Can you hear me now, Joseph? Okay, I see. Never mind. Okay, awesome. Okay, so since 0 can't be doubled, right? 0 doubled would still be 0. The only number that we can double is 1. So I started off here with 1, okay? And I just doubled each time. Now the number that I had in this example, how I got to 53 was my birth date, which is on the 4th, and then my current age. So you're going to do that with your birth date and your current age, and you're going to come up with a number. My number just happened to be 53. So here, 32 was not bigger than 53. So that's the largest number that can go into 53, if that makes sense. Because if we put a 1 here under 64, 64 is bigger than 53. Does that make sense, Janiqua? Okay, awesome. Now, Joseph, what is it exactly that you're lost about? Can you explain it? All of binary code? Well, I tell you what, probably the best thing to do is to go through the voice thread a couple of times and see if see if you're able to catch on to it. Okay. I'm trying to go through it, live for you, but basically binary code is how the computer can communicate with us on its basic level. This is how the computer is communicating. So whatever we see on screen, on our monitor, that is speaking to us, but the computer only communicates in binary code. So it has to have a way to turn our 26-letter alphabet into its own language. Okay. And its own language is zeros and ones. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you this second one here where I provide you with what is called an ASCII chart. And I kind of talked about this in yesterday's session where I showed you the capital A is 65, okay, on the ASCII chart, and then, or uppercase A. And then every letter after the uppercase A has its own number as well. So it just goes up by one as we go to a different letter. So A starts off at 65, capital A starts at 65, capital B would be 66, capital C would be 67. Okay. Then the lowercase letters would start off at 97. So A, lowercase a would be 97. That's, you know, that's just how the computer is able to communicate for that letter. Okay. So that's how we're able to see the letter A on screen, is because the computer really is seeing it as the number 97. And then that 97 is converted into binary code, which is an 8-digit number. Okay. Let me see who's asking a question here. Okay. So, okay, Joseph, I see it. Okay, Joseph, I'm not sure how I keep getting on mute. Uh, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Janiqua says, if my birth date is 3 plus 23 equals 26. Okay, so let's go to 26 on this chart here. Okay, so we already know that those bigger than 26 would be zeros. So these first numbers here, 128, 64, and 32 would be zeros. So we would put a 0 in each of these spots, right? And then 16 would go into 23, right? Or was it 26? Yeah, 16 goes into 26, okay? And when it does, it leaves the remainder of 10. So which of these numbers brings up a 10? So we already have the 16, so pretend there's a 1 here. Which one of these numbers would equal 10 together? 8, 4, 2, and 1. So I can see immediately that 8 and 2 is 10. So those would have a 1 underneath. And then the 4 and the 1 would be zeros. Okay, Janiqua. So you're saying, yeah, 000, 16, 8, and 2. Correct. Does it make sense? Kind of make sense now? Okay. And it's really, really helpful as someone who's going to be putting together computers, understand how the computer communicates. Okay. It's super helpful for you to know how the computer communicates with us. Okay, and again, this is machine language. Now, So how does a programmer communicate with the computer? Well, a programmer basically uses what is considered to be logical thinking. That's what, programming is, logical thinking. And it gets to the solution, okay, of a problem in the most efficient manner. Okay. So, depending upon the type of program used, um, or programming language used, um, the goal for that programming language would be to get to the solution as quickly and efficiently as possible. Because remember, the computer is already, in the language of the computer, is already going to have a lot of work to do with those, building those binary codes to communicate with us. So the more quickly and more efficiently we can get to the resolution or to the answer for the computer's sake, that's less processing that the computer has to do. Okay. Now for humans, we can, we can think it over a little while, right? And so it's really, we can kind of talk to ourselves about it and try to figure it out and try to create different ways to make it easier, right? But the computer, certainly, Janiqua, you're welcome. The computer doesn't have that capability of thinking. It only knows what programmers put into it. Okay. Um, and then what it does is it recalls that information from a human. And that's how you're able to get results from, say, for instance, a search on Google. If you go to google.com and you type in a keyword or a key phrase, that, your computer doesn't know, it doesn't know anything. It only knows what Google's programmers stored in their databases about that thing that you've searched on. Okay, so it's just recalling the information. Okay. So are there any other questions about binary code? Okay. Now you want to, if there are, type them into the chat. You want to make note of the fact that the second slide deals with the ASCII chart in this Practice Computing Basics voice thread. Okay, so you have to, I give you a charge in this initial instruction on the page, and I tell you what I want you to do. I demonstrate it first, and then you go through. And basically what it is, I demonstrate to you how I can spell my name basically in binary code. Okay, so I take a look here at all of the letters on the screen, and I'm just taking my first name, and you do the same. And so my first name is Sherry, right? Sherry. So I would find the uppercase letter for S and find that ASCII number, which is 83. And then from 83, I find on this chart how I would possibly make up 83. So the largest number that can go into 83 would be that 64. So there would be a 1 here. And then the balance of that I would find here. Okay. So 83 minus 64, right? 64 to 74 would be 10, and then what's left is 9. So I have 19 that I need to find here. So it would be a 1 under 64, a 1 under 6, and a 1 under 2 and a 1 under 1. Okay. So you're trying to do that for each letter of your name. Okay. With your first letter of your first name being capitalized. Okay, so we're going to take our final 10-minute break. So get up and stretch, walk around for a minute, get something to drink or something to eat, and meet back at 12:20, 12:22. Okay, I'll see you then. All right. So we're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. Okay. So it's 12:22 and let me share my screen here. Okay. So we've established already that the operating system is the most instrumental piece of software on our computer because without the operating system, we couldn't communicate with the hardware, which is our computer. All right. So, so the operating system has to be loaded before any other software during the startup or the boot process. Okay. And it goes through in this particular, this is in the system software sim book. It goes through and explains why that is, okay? Because all of your other software needs the operating system to also communicate with the hardware, okay? The internal hardware and the external hardware. So for example, if I needed to print a document after I typed a document out, I couldn't do that if I didn't have an operating system. So that's how important an operating system is. Okay. So there are loads and loads and loads of things that you can sort of think about with an operating system. Okay. Every computer that you use, sorry for that. Every computer that is in existence today has an operating system. Okay. And so for a Dell or Lenovo or an Acer, an HP, they're all going to use Windows because that is an IBM compatible, you know, um, operating system. And then we have Apple. Apple has its own operating system. And I believe, because I'm not an Apple connoisseur. I have used an Apple machine and have even taught people how to use an Apple machine, but I haven't been on one probably in a year or so. But I believe Apple, the operating system now is System 11. Okay. And so then we have the Chromebook, right? So you can get whether it's a Samsung Chromebook, an Acer Chromebook, an HP Chromebook. All of these different manufacturers have Chromebooks. Well, the Chromebooks run by the operating system basically that looks like your browser, and it's called Chrome as well. Okay. But Windows, by far, Windows is the leading operating system throughout the world, throughout the earth. Okay. Um, and, that probably has more to do with the fact that it is an open operating system. And what I mean by open is there are all sorts of programmers, okay, that can use Microsoft Windows to build applications or programs, okay, that are compatible with that one. Whereas with Apple, you have to get special permission from Apple to make any programs for the Mac. And that's why there's a limited number of applications or programs for a Mac computer versus other computers. Okay. And so knowing that, is half the battle. But a lot of people like to use the Mac. They like the MacBook, whether it's a desktop or a laptop. Um, and some just like it because it reminds them of their iPhone, right? They become used to their iPhone and it's very similar. Okay. So the software that we're going to use in January is the Microsoft 365 desktop apps. And that is Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and a program you probably have never heard of called Access. And it is a database management system. And so we will, get sort of an elementary view of each one of those programs in January. We'll go through them really, really quickly. Okay. But with a Mac, Microsoft has developed or has used the Mac System 11 operating system to get Excel, Word, and PowerPoint onto a Mac. But if you're using a Mac will not run Microsoft Access. Okay. So you'll have to find, if you're using a Mac, you'll have to find a PC to use in order to launch Microsoft Access. Okay. Now, on a Mac, you have what is called virtualization software. Okay. And the virtualization software, it's called Boot Camp, and it should be installed on your Mac if you have a Mac. It comes with the Mac. And if you have Boot Camp, you can use Access because Boot Camp is a virtualization software. Okay. But again, I would highly recommend you get on a Windows machine. It's just better, a better experience. Okay. Now, so some would be like, well, what in the world is a virtualization software? So basically, it's basically in the cloud. It's and when I say in the cloud, meaning it's online and that's where you can access and launch it from. Okay. Now, for those of you that are watching or getting updates on your phone about Windows 11, which is the latest Microsoft operating system or version of its operating system. Windows 11 is in the cloud. So it's only available, or at least it was in August when it became available. It was only made available for small business or small organizations that has have multiple users. So their operating system basically launched from the cloud. Okay. And basically mimics a Windows environment. They could still have their own other applications or programs, but they would use Windows in the cloud, if that makes sense. And if not, it's okay. But it's kind of like SimNet being a simulated environment for programs. Windows 11 is a simulated Windows environment, okay, for those who want to use Windows, but maybe have a Mac machine or maybe have a Chromebook or a tablet, but they want to use all the other apps that are, IBM compatible apps or Windows compatible apps, if that makes sense. If not, we will definitely get there at some point and you'll be able to understand it better. Okay. So when you're interacting with a computer and you're using your mouse or, using the keyboard, you're using the Windows graphical user interface, or GUI for short, GUI, graphical user interface. And this just allows you as a computer user to communicate using graphical elements on the screen. Okay, so the objects such as icons, windows, menus, buttons, all of that is possible due to your GUI, or graphical user interface. Okay, now we all still have what is called a command line interface for our operating system, whether you're on a Mac or whether you're, using a Windows-based machine. Okay, and so what does a command line interface look like? Well, you could simply go to your start button or your type here to search bar, and you could type in command. And up at the very top of the list, and let me share my screen, all of my screen, because really what I was sharing with you was the Google, or not, yeah, the Google Chrome window and not my entire screen. So hold on, give me a second here. Okay, so you should see my full screen, and when you know that you're seeing someone's full screen, you can see the bottom row, that taskbar, okay, that has the system clock and date in the bottom right corner. Okay, so on this type here to search, just simply type in the word command, and as you get closer, you see best match at the top where it says command prompt, and you just simply tap on it, and you still have, access to the command prompt. So when I was in college, right, personal computers was not necessarily in every home. Okay, we had access to the command prompt though. And so we had to know specifically the location of our documents, the location of any images that we wanted to include in our documents. So it was just like this long path, this long name. Okay. Um, and we would have to say, for instance, if we wanted to print something, we would have to type in print and then the name of the file and then the name of the images that were included in that file. So it was a very, just long, drawn out and involved process of computing. Well, someone, probably in my generation decided, okay, well, this seems like a headache, and just made it easier by, masking all of that long, drawn out path or file name, um, and just keeping that in the background and showing it visually on screen. So that's how we're able to see, say, for instance, if I was to bring up, if I was to bring out or bring up my downloads folder, okay, we see that downloads is in this PC and then downloads. What if I tapped on this recording that I did just before the class? I'm going to, and my computer's running slow, so I'm gonna go into the properties. I right-clicked to go into the properties, and basically what I'm looking at is what my file is made of. Okay. Up here, this is the name of the file. Okay, so that big long name that I gave it on the command prompt, I would have to know that that entire, that entire line before I could do anything. This was back 30 years ago when I was in college. Okay. Well, today you don't have to do that. Today you just have little folders and, you know, icons that you can click on or double click on, okay, to your files and just bring them over or print them. You can actually, let me go to a little file that I know it's a Word document. So I could right click on that and I could have a little short menu and actually print it from here. Whereas back 30 years ago, I couldn't do that. Okay. So as I mentioned, everything that we're doing with computer today, you never know. In the next 3 months, it could be made easier because there's a new way, a new way of thinking about getting this same thing done. Now, also, keyboard shortcuts is real important. So I could have this file open and use hold the control key down and strike the P as in print key on my keyboard. And that would initialize a print command to send this document to the printer. So keyboard shortcuts are super important as well, and a more efficient way to get things done. Okay. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions with that? Just making sure. Okay, so multitasking. Okay, now you'll hear these keywords or this keyword used throughout your entire schooling or through your professional life. You'll hear about multitask with this, have 2 monitors, have 3 monitors, and blase blase. I'm just here to tell you that's not how the human brain works. So, um, although we would want to hope that we can multitask, really, we can only do one thing at a time. Okay. Um, and really have a focus on that. So, although we can have multiple programs up and running at the same time, our focus can only be on one program at a time. Okay. So, um, the ability to run multiple programs at the same time is called multitasking. Okay. You as a human, you cannot multitask unless something is already a habit. So say for instance, do you know some people who, honest to goodness, they could not walk and chew gum at the same time, like they have a problem? The only way that you can do those things, walk and chew gum, is if you already have walking sort of as a habit that you have formed already. Okay, so say for instance, why do they teach people who have been in a coma how to walk again? Because their mind is not set on that habit of walking anymore. So they have to retrain the brain to use the motor skills. The motor skills are the ones that we convert to habits. Okay. So just know that there's a difference between humans multitasking and machines multitasking. But humans humans interacting with machines, again, can only do or complete one thing at a time. Okay? So it's sort of important that we understand that. Also with system software or operating systems, there's all sorts of features that we really need to understand. Okay, some computers are 32-bit, some are 64-bit. Okay, and you may encounter two versions of the same operating system that differ only in their bit numbers. Okay, and as we referred to, bit is short for binary digit, and it refers to zeros and ones that represent data in its most fundamental form. So a 32-bit operating system is intended to work with older 32-bit processors, which can handle only 4 gigabytes of RAM. Okay. The new processors are 64-bit, making them more powerful and capable of supporting much more RAM. Okay. The 64-bit operating systems are created to work with these type of processors, which are quite prevalent in today's computers. So that is a super important, statement that is in your system software sim book. Okay. Now, device drivers, every device that you have, every internal device and every external device has its own software, basically. Okay. And so in order for the operating system to communicate with the hardware, whether it's an internal or external, it has to have what is called a device driver or the device's own software. Okay. So it basically tells the operating system how this device is to be used, okay, by the operating system. So sometimes you'll get messages that will come up and say, well, do you want to update a driver? Just know that it's software, okay, for a particular device. Okay. And then we get into using servers. Okay. So a server at its most basic is simply a computer. Okay. But a server is kind of like 5 or 10 computers combined into one. It's got much larger capacity. Okay. So there are server operating systems as well. Okay. Now, as I mentioned in a previous class, a lot of techno geeks like Linux. Okay. And here is a description of Linux. And Windows has a server operating system as well, but Linux is liked a lot by those in the technology space because it's more customizable, and once you have it set up, hint, you got to get it set up. Once you have it set up, then you know that makes all the difference. But a lot of people that have technology backgrounds just prefer Linux over Windows Server. Okay, and it's server operating system. So it's kind of like the same operating system, but it's got more features. Okay, as like say for instance a Windows. Now, on all of your computers, especially desktop computers or stationary computers, there is a particular kind of operating system for that sort of machine. Okay. And as I mentioned, the Chrome operating system is Google Chrome, Google Chrome's operating system, and it looks a lot like the Google Chrome browser. Okay. So basically, the Chrome web browser is running a Chromebook. Okay. And then you have mobile operating systems. So what's on your iPhone and iPad is going to be different than what you use on a Mac. Okay. And mostly what it's going to be is a scaled down version of what's on a Mac. Okay. And then, of course, for Google powered devices, mobile devices, they use Android. Okay. Google owns Android. And then you have software that are considered to be utilities. Okay. So we learned that the operating systems are responsible for managing the hardware and allowing you to easily communicate with the computer. Okay. But historically, desktop operating systems included only the most fundamental programming, letting users complete basic tasks such as managing files and opening programs. And so little by little, programmers began to create a variety of utilities that enhanced or extended the operating system's capabilities. So that's what a utility is. It enhances or extends an operating system's capabilities. Okay. And in some cases, these utilities offered features that were not provided by the operating system. Okay, whether that is to protect your computer from viruses or increase the storage space through compression. Okay, but there are utilities. So there are security utilities. Okay, we all know what's going on in the antivirus sort of, you know, area, right? Like we could do a lot without viruses. We can do a lot without hackers, right? But we got to have both to keep everyone honest, right? But antivirus um, is basically a utility. It's part of the security utility on a computer. It wasn't necessarily something that automatically came with the computer, um, but I would say there is a line of antivirus programs out there, and the one that I use, and which has been, apart from Russia and Kaspersky, I use Bitdefender, and that's because it is a U.S. based um, antivirus program, and basically it goes after malicious software, malicious attempts to, get your credit card information or hold your data for ransom, things like that. Okay. Now, there is a firewall um, on most Windows devices. Okay. So a firewall is a utility that is usually activated for you. Okay. But several of the security suites also include a software firewall. So basically, a firewall is dedicated to examining and blocking certain internet traffic. Okay. And then, of course, you have encryption, which basically scrambles data um, to make it unreadable by anyone who doesn't have, the proper code, or they call it a key. Okay. It's like a PIN or password, a numeric PIN or password. Okay. And you'll read all about that. Okay. You also have utilities that help with managing passwords. Okay. I have with Bitdefender, I have something that comes up every time I go to a bank website, or if I want to order something online, a separate, more secure, what they call a VPN, virtual private network utility will come up, to where, your everyday run of the mill hacker is not going to see me in a separate window doing bank transactions. So, okay. And here is the explanation of that virtual machine that I was telling you about. Okay. So definitely, read up on it. It'll help you sort of frame your thoughts about, you know, about Windows 11, about boot camp that comes with Mac computers. And also, there's another one called Parallels, and you can put it on a Mac or a Chromebook and run Windows. And I think that is what made Microsoft make its Windows 11 um, be, in the cloud or be virtualization software. Because all of these businesses started cropping up, all of these software entities started cropping up and basically taking, Microsoft's place. So I guess they decided to step in that area and sort of nix that kind of whole industry. But there's so much to cover in this system software. So I would say, take some time over the weekend if you can, and actually go through this information. There's an entire class that deals with just the system software itself, because we could honestly spend 2 years dealing with the operating system and still have another year left. I mean, it's so extensive, it's so vast. Now, most users can probably learn the basics of an operating system in in 16 weeks. Okay. But the more involved attributes of an operating system, you need more time. Okay. Um, Things that we will get into, of course, in the A plus class will be about defragmenting, okay, partitioning drives, things like that. But it's good to read and see what all of that is about, okay, up front before you actually start doing it. Um, we will learn how to compress files, and that is very, very easy, okay? And basically what file compression is we make the file smaller than its original size, okay? And typically why you would want to do that is if you're sharing documents, whether that's through email or with someone that maybe they don't have, the capabilities that you have with your devices. Maybe they have much less capabilities. You would want to compress files. And I would say you definitely want to compress files that have, a lot of images or videos, things like that. You would want to get them down to size. Now, before we go today, I just want to clarify that when I record these sessions, right? I basically record them using Microsoft Teams. Then I have to download those and basically upload them to YouTube. Okay. YouTube compresses it, makes it smaller. Okay. And then that way I'm able to share with you a shareable YouTube link so that you can actually view the video. Okay. um, which would take a lot of bandwidth away from if I was hosting my own site with my own videos of our recorded sessions. Okay, so YouTube kind of makes it really easy for users to store their videos or multimedia sort of files on. Okay, but let me show you with Windows how a file compression goes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a few files here, and they really don't matter which one, but I'm just going to grab these 3 Word documents. Okay. And when I say grab, I mean select. So I'm going to select one, and I have to hold down either the control or the shift key on my keyboard to select all 3. Okay. Now, if they're together, then I would want to use the shift key. So I could select one and then go to the last one, hold down the shift key, and then select the first one. So that selects all 3. Now, if I had one that was out here and another one that was on another row, I could use the control key, because the control key allows me to select multiple files that are not necessarily immediately adjacent to one another or immediately together. Okay. But you could certainly use the control key to select each one of these as well. Okay. It's just easier if you use the shift key if they're together. Okay. So now I see that I've got these 3 selected. Okay. So what I would do is I would simply right click, and you see as I selected these things, all of these options then became available. Okay. But to compress or put them all together in a nice little zipped folder, I would just simply right click on one and then go to the send to and then choose compressed or zipped folder. So I'm going to do that. And so this zipped folder is created, and it takes on the name of that first file that I selected. Okay. And I'm just going to give it a new name. And you see how it ends in .zip. Okay, that lets you know that it is a zipped or compressed file. And then I use the enter key. Now, what that means is if I double click on this folder, inside this folder are all of those files, and the compressed size is listed here, and the original size is listed here. So do you see how they're considerably smaller? Okay, from the original size. Okay, now if I wanted to extract or remove these files out of this folder, I would simply go back to this folder here, make sure it's selected, which it is, and select extract all. Once I extract all, it gives me this little screen here, and I tell it exactly where I want it to be extracted to. So instead of zipped files, I want it to just be in the downloads area. And then I would say, show extracted files when complete, which I really don't need that since I already have it in the background, but I'm going to do it just for this demonstration. I'm going to click extract. And it tells me, well, it already has 3 files with the same name, right? Because compressing, you're not moving it. You're just making a copy of it, right? And then compressing it. So I don't want to really extract it here, right? So you want to extract it to somewhere where it's not already located, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Yes, class is over. Thank you so much, Janiqua. It is time to log out, and I will see you all next Tuesday. Continue working on these sim books because we want to complete those. And also by next Wednesday, you want to complete the Practice Computing Basics voice thread. Thank you. Good day.